it's very good to be here, and if you knew what it cost for me to be here, actually, it took about travel for a day and a half. I'm very much glad to be here, and I expect a big party this evening, so let's go for it. My name is Michael Lints. I'm a venture partner at Golden Gate Ventures, which is a Singapore-based venture capital firm. And I want to talk a bit more about what VCs are looking for in emerging markets. We invest in Southeast Asia. Again, companies based in Singapore, and we try to invest in the 6 main countries in Southeast Asia, which are Singapore, Malaysia, Vietnam, Philippines, Thailand, missing one, and Indonesia. The interesting thing about emerging markets, and also the interesting thing about being here, is meeting first-time founders. Young entrepreneurs, guys and girls that are starting their first company. And being a serial entrepreneur myself, you actually see the mistakes that they are going to make. Because eventually everybody will make some mistakes in their company, and because you had a few companies, you've done a few exits, you will see what's going to happen. The same with emerging markets. Worked a long time in Europe, worked shorter time in the US. And because we've seen the entire ecosystem evolve in Europe and in the US, you also see the mistakes or the things that will happen in emerging markets. This is a lovely quote. It's one of my favorite from Jim Rogers. When you read it, he actually says, you have to be in Asia because that's where it's happening. And of course, after today, I'll say, no, you have to be in Baku because that's where it's happening. So convince me, please. But it is kind of true. What you see is serial entrepreneurs and investors do travel around the world to find the next big thing and to find new opportunities. And we've done the same, actually. Again, I started my own first company back in the Netherlands. This is almost 15 years ago. I sold it about 6 years later to start investing myself in different companies, starting in the Netherlands, but eventually investing in the US, in Europe, and now in Singapore and other countries in Asia. So, what do you look for when you're looking for investments in a country? Well, first you look at, how is the region or the country, how is it doing economically? What should we look for in the economics of a specific country? How fast is it growing? And when you look at Asia, and specifically when you look at Southeast Asia, you see some incredible numbers. And I just want to pull up one number. I think this is it. The increase of mobile users is phenomenal. This is including, by the way, a bit of India as well. But when you see these numbers, and when you think about starting a new company, or even when you're a Facebook or a Twitter or another big tech firm, you know that this is a force to be reckoned with. I mean, these are 3 billion mobile subscribers. That's a lot of phone minutes. That's a lot of data that you're going to use. Other things taken into perspective is what's going to happen in different verticals. What's going to happen with big data in Southeast Asia. Like I said, what's going to happen with mobile users. Can we use big data to predict certain events? Can startups actually start using data for logistics or for transportation? Or can we use it for the weather even? Different young people that are finding solutions for local problems, that's what we look for in emerging markets that have phenomenal growth. Again, these are some interesting numbers. So what we've seen is in Southeast Asia, it has been pretty stable over the last 15 to 10 years. Because it has been pretty stable, it means like it's a safe haven to invest in. But is it really a safe haven? I don't know if any of you have ever traveled to Vietnam or to Indonesia, but doing investments in these countries isn't, I would say, a safe haven. Things change a lot. It's difficult to invest in the country, and it's even more difficult to get your money out of the country once you've made an exit. These are all things you have to look into when you start investing in an emerging market. It's nothing like Europe. It's nothing like the US. It's really doing a new thing in a new market. These are some more numbers. It's home to more than 600 million people in Southeast Asia. The population is larger than the European Union or North America. What's also important that the middle class is also growing in a very, very rapid pace, which means that the spending power is increasing rapidly, which also means that people have money to buy, either to buy apps or buy groceries online or do e-commerce. So there's more and more happening in the region, and there's more and more possibilities for young entrepreneurs to start their own business. I kind of like this figure because not a lot of people know this, but for instance, Malaysia and Indonesia are one of the biggest Facebook countries in the world. So when you look at the penetration of Facebook in Indonesia or Malaysia, and even Twitter, it's phenomenal. So the reach in these countries using Facebook or using Twitter provides big possibilities for young entrepreneurs. I just want to give an example. So approximately 3 years ago, 2 young entrepreneurs started an e-grocery company online. It's as simple as it sounds. It brings your groceries to your home once you order it online. It's quite simple. I think we all could have thought of such a company. Because it was so new and because it started in an emerging market, they were able to raise their valuation from 100,000 in their first round to 100 million in 4 years later. I mean, I think every founder or every entrepreneur dreams about these figures. Well, in emerging markets, it is possible. Just hit the right spot. Just make sure that you find the right niche to start your company and find the right partners as well. So what else do we look for in an emerging market? The biggest problem is most of the times there is no or not too much infrastructure, which means there aren't too much investors. There aren't, well, there should be banks, but banks aren't investing in startups because mostly they're kind of afraid to start investing in a young company with a first-time founder and a technology they don't really understand. So what do we look for in emerging markets? This is really important. We look for accelerators, organizations that help young founders and help young startups to grow their business. We're looking for incubators. We're looking for angel investors, so people in other businesses that have exited their business and are willing to invest back into the ecosystem. We look for instance, this is a funny story. So in Indonesia, palm oil is really big. And we know some investors in the palm oil that are investing in tech companies. Well, the difficulty explaining to somebody who is, well, I would say of age and doesn't have a smartphone, doesn't use Facebook, doesn't use Twitter, to explain that we're going to invest in the next Uber in Indonesia. The first question is, what's an Uber? Well, Uber is like a car service. It brings you from A to B when you order it via your phone. Oh, but I can call a taxi. Why should I use an Uber to call a taxi? Okay, so I said, I'll stop explaining. Where is your son? So he brought his son. We talked to his son. His son, yeah, of course I knew Uber. I use Facebook. I use Twitter. So we try to educate also, I would say the older investors in emerging markets, the possibilities of investing in the tech space. So what's important? Accelerators, incubators. Banks are, in some sense, are important because they can help the startup infrastructure. Telecom companies, but especially investors from other industries. Those are really important because most of them are entrepreneurs and they have gone through the entrepreneurial life cycle, which actually means that they can help advise you not specifically on tech issues, but certainly on entrepreneurial issues. And the funny thing is, all these organizations are founded in the last couple of years. So it also shows how fast an emerging market can grow. This is something which has happened, I would say, the last 2 years. So when looking at an emerging market, you mainly see angel investors and some risky guys like me investing in young startups. What eventually will happen when an emerging market evolves, is you see these big investors, for instance, Sequoia Capital, coming into the region as well, which definitely helps because these big investors can write bigger tickets, so they can transfer bigger, larger funds to startups, which actually helps the growth investments in the region. You see a lot of angel investors doing small checks, investing 100,000 or 200,000 US dollars. But when a company really grows, you need more money. And when the banks are reluctant to invest in these companies, you need these big investment funds to invest in the growth capital of your company. What we've also seen is because there's a environment of young startups and young companies growing really fast, you see all these big tech companies come to the region as well. And this is very important. Building a startup ecosystem in an emerging market needs these big tech firms. Simply because at some point in time you would like to sell your company, preferably for the highest valuation possible. Well, you need companies that are going to buy your startup. You need a Facebook, you need a Google, you need an SAP, you need a Citrix or an IBM in your region to actually help evolve the startup ecosystem, but also eventually buy those companies. So what happens when you sell your company? What do you do when you sell your company? That's correct. So apart from buying a Ferrari, you should invest back in other young companies. So that's also a reason why these big organizations are very important. As soon as you've exited your own business, you should actually give back to the ecosystem and invest in other young entrepreneurs as well. And it's more than investing, it's also giving advice, it's also adding value to these young companies. So again, an emerging market needs a few, I would say, basics to develop their ecosystem. The thing is, being in an emerging market is really interesting. It kind of feels like being a cowboy and developing something new with a lot of uncertainty. But there are tremendous challenges doing this. A friend of mine who has invested heavily in India said, I was prepared to lose money for the first 5 years. I actually just needed to be educated on the entire ecosystem, lose money, and then hope to gain money in the next 5 years. Luckily, he's doing pretty well, by the way, so no worries. But what are the challenges and opportunities? When you look at Southeast Asia, it's cross-border because it's different cultures, it's very, very different people, it's different currencies, different economies, different ecosystems. Everything is different. Investing in Singapore is different than investing in Indonesia or investing in Vietnam or investing in Thailand. How do you learn this? It's learning by doing. It's making mistakes ourselves again. It's being an entrepreneur again. It's making mistakes. It's learning by doing. And eventually, it's also partnering with other investors in the region that can help you actually, that help you evolve the ecosystem to a more mature ecosystem as opposed to being a very young market with lots of uncertainties. This is my favorite picture. Actually, when I travel to Indonesia or travel to Thailand, this is mostly what you see when you're in traffic. It's stuck. There's a lot of scooters driving around, a lot of cars, and you're always stuck. Is this a problem or is this opportunity? It's a big opportunity. So that's what we try to tell all these young founders and all these young entrepreneurs. Look at local problems in your country or in your region. First, try to solve these local problems in your country and in your region. Because solving this problem in Indonesia would actually have a big economical impact. So not always try to be the next Snapchat or the next Google or the next Facebook. But please also look at what are the local problems I can solve in my country or in my region. Well, I think this is the thing I like the most, the incredible mix in culture. And I think that's what I like the most, coming to a new country and learning about the ecosystem. So I'm really keen to learn more about you guys later on. I just want to know what keeps you busy, what are your dreams, what is your passion, what is your vision on what should be happening here in Azerbaijan, what are the next steps for the region, because I think all these young people sitting here are going to have economic impact in this country. So I'm really keen to learn more from you guys, as I've learned a lot about Asia in the last couple of years. This is just a funny slide. So what we do is, this is a matrix of the major tech industries globally. It's kind of hard to read, but we use it as a map when we go into an emerging market. So for instance, when e-commerce picks up, what will you see? Payments will pick up as well. And this has happened in every single region. So we actually use this as a guide to invest in certain industries or invest in certain companies when we go to an emerging market. Because it's really hard to read, I would be glad to make it later if anyone is interested. So I just named a few. So we've seen a few of these investment opportunities, especially in Southeast Asia. E-commerce, because there's a big logistics problem. So buying and selling goods online is a big hit. Payments and fintech is very interesting for the simple reason only 20% in the entire region has a bank account or a credit card, which means new payment solutions will bring, massive impact to the economy. So for instance, doing payments using your cell phone as opposed to using payments via a online bank transaction. So one of our companies actually does micropayments using the cell phone minutes on your telephone. And of course, marketplaces is one thing, we love to buy stuff in Asia. So having a marketplace where you sell and buy stuff in Asia is a very, very upcoming vertical as well. What I would like to give you at the end of my presentation is I would really like to challenge young entrepreneurs like yourself to think about what can I add to the local ecosystem? What can I add to the local tech space? Is it in starting my own company, solving a local problem, find a group of smart people, start an accelerator, do something in the incubation field? Because I really feel that there's a lot of stuff happening in this region, but it needs more, I would say it needs more power to really bring those next level startups from Azerbaijan as well. I want to thank you for your time. If you have any questions, Twitter me, Facebook me, Instagram me, Snapchat me, whatever. I'm almost everywhere. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thanks so much for coming out here. You wouldn't believe it, Michael called me actually. That was what, Sunday evening, I think, when you were trying to board your flight from Singapore to come here. There was a whole issue with visas. He couldn't get on that flight. He came in on the next flight. So it's a big opportunity for you guys to have Michael over here. Maybe first, before we move forward, any questions? We probably have space for one question, time-wise. See if I have another mic. That's over here. Yep. There we go.
Hello, thank you very much for your presentation, very interesting. You mentioned Rocket Internet as one of the companies which is good when they come in the market. My concern is they usually tend to invest a lot in advertising and kind of like suffocate any other businesses in the same business model, like food ordering Rocket. Yeah. So how do you see that as being a little bit kind of like dumping and non-competitive versus invigorating the e-commerce scene?
So specifically, I could talk like 4 hours about Rocket Internet, but I won't. So specifically, when you look at Southeast Asia, so Rocket Internet is heavily investing in the region with different companies like Zalora, Foodpanda. I can name a few, Easy Taxi as well. The good thing about Rocket coming to the region is they actually bring a lot of talent to the region because they're investing heavily in so much of these young companies. We get a lot of talent from Rocket, and if you know the company, you know that the lifespan of your career with Rocket is not so long, which means that you can have other opportunities in the region. We do have discussions on the marketing side because they have a lot of marketing spend, which is in that sense also good for us because we see them educating the market with their market spend. So we see it as a positive that they're in the region, actually.
I know that there was someone from Rocket, I think, here in the room, or at least we had. No, there's no one from Rocket? Oh, they left already. Okay, perfect. Well, too bad they can answer. One more question? Maybe. Do you have the mic from the neighbor?
I was just going to say that I was working with Rocket Internet here as well in local. Okay. They've launched Kaimu, if you know. This is a Pakistani company here. Yeah. And they, exactly as you said, they were trying to find something that people needed here and apply all those. This is something like eBay, so they applied all their needs here in Azerbaijan and it worked very, very fine.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Just before you leave, Michael, you mentioned Uber. How many guys here know Uber or have used Uber? So Uber, I don't know, maybe I'm the one breaking the news. They're coming to Azerbaijan and they're actually looking for people to run their office. So I got an email from a friend who works at Uber this morning. They're like, "Oh, Max, you're in Baku, just keep in mind that they want to expand there. So if you have any cool people, do refer to us. So if anyone has interest, I'm happy to refer to Uber. So it's coming to you guys as well."
Awesome.
Thanks, Michael.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me just take the. Let me take the mic. Perfect.